Hi everyone, this is Higinio. My name's Higinio and this is Higinio Talks. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about some things that I find whenever I'm describing the world around me. I think about socioeconomic sociological dynamics versus psychological dimensions. Now we'll talk about psychological dimensions at another time. Pretty much what it is taking any kind of concept and thinking about how it can affect the group, which would be a sociological dynamic, or the individual. So today we're going to talk about a few sociological dynamics, and we're going to save the dimensions for another time. There's probably going to be this is going to be a series, a Higinio Talks series. It's going to be the dynamics of sociology is what I like to call them. And so today we're going to talk about five of the most popular, the top five that we all run into. So you've already heard of some of these, of course. These are, and then it was going to be we're going to start with age and race. And I did write these down: age, gender, race, socioeconomic status, and education. And so, starting with age, we can look at how when you're younger, there are going to be certain expectations of you. And so, as part of analyzing this as a group, we can look, we're going to try to stay focused on the groups for the dynamics of sociology. To look at this as a group, we can look at what people at different ages do. For example, teenagers tend to hang around with everyone would maybe hang out with people their age. As you age, as you get older, people tend to have less groups of friends. You tend to solidify your network. There's a lot of different trends with age groups. It's interesting to be able to pick these out, and then having an awareness of this can actually help you as you age as well, because you kind of understand what people are doing. So if I'm 25, I can understand, I can begin to think a little bit, introspect about someone who is 30 and understand what kind of life that 30-year-olds live. And it kind of gives us an idea of how we're maturing, if we are, if we're worrying what we're supposed to do in life. We're all doing the right thing in life, except that sometimes it's hard to see that perspective. And so these are some things that'll help just kind of understand the world around us, not get so caught up in the definitions and in the world that's portrayed by media and film and all that stuff. Even the people around us, a lot of people won't stop to think about these things. They're all very, very complex, so we can move on for now, because we could talk all day about age. So gender is the next one, and that's the same thing. We can tie in like gender or maybe sex. What it means is pretty much just what do the girls do, what do the guys do in general. You can subdivide it into culture, but this is in groups. And so groups of guys, groups of girls, everyone will behave differently. If it's one guy, we can look at that would be a dimension of psychology, how gender affects that individual. However, we're going to look at how groups are affected, and so in this case, we can dive into gender. Some of the obvious stuff. Groups of guys like to watch sports. They got to get together for specific things. Girls like to go shopping. They like to talk about people and relationships, as opposed to guys maybe talking about things, more concrete things, activities, functions, things like that. But once again, we can understand a little bit about how gender is seen out there, and kind of what the roles are. The goal of this is, if we begin to understand exactly how our mind is trapped in a way into this world, how our mind is made to think. We're designed to think a certain way, and so it's like we're spending our whole lives trying to break free from that. And in order to break free from it, all we have to do is identify it, and then we can know that we are something aside from that. And so nowadays, there's also a lot of other gender roles. For example, there's transgender people. There's all kinds of stuff, and everything can be analyzed in groups. And I think it's a good way to reflect, and that could be another dynamic of sociology. Now, race is another thing we can look at. This is a good one. All of these are actually going to be good for developing identity. We can talk about identity, but race is a really good one, because it actually it it's pervasive to every part of our life, and actually it can really a lot of how we are defined is by race and culture, and so there's certain expectations that are set on certain races and certain groups. There's certain expectations placed on a on on a group of Latin men when they're together. For example, our expectations will be heightened. That's why it's important to look at both sociology and the psychology dimensions of psychology and the dynamics of sociology, because the norms of the particular culture or the particular concept that we're analyzing, the particular dynamic or dimension, it actually gets heightened and enforced in groups most of the time. So if there's a certain way that a certain gender or a certain age or a certain race is supposed to act, that's going to be you're going to be more forced to do that psychologically for survival when in groups. And so it's important to understand these. It's important we can understand how what our nature is as humans. And so race is one that it ties in closely to culture and to area, but sometimes you'll find yourself more identified to this race versus that race. It's important to kind of understand that and accept it and to be proud of anything like that, because everyone's going to be a little different, and so to be able to find some kind of pride in whatever you want to, and it's not even about pronouncing that. People talk about crazy things like gay pride, for example. That's some of this stuff is you being proud is an internal thing. Most of what we do is an internal thing. It doesn't when we begin to have the need to adjust, we need to have a connection with the physical world, but we do not need to actually have a we don't need to be over the top in the physical world. And so some of the exhibitions of pride in the world are sometimes can be over the top. It's important to have an inner pride, and not necessarily important to boast about it or anything like that for anybody on any issue. Last couple other things. Socioeconomic status is another one. That kind of just means how much money you have. Of course, if you are, these are neat because if you, for example, if you are filthy rich, but you don't behave like someone that's filthy rich, maybe you have, people that are marginalized tend to develop more soft skills. They're more intuition, perhaps. They have more empathy towards others. If you're somebody who's filthy rich, who maybe wasn't marginalized as much, but maybe took an interest, maybe had friends, you learn to empathize with certain things, and you may be a little different than people that are also in your same socioeconomic status. So it is important to understand kind of where these things come from, so you can know that you can step out of that box if you would like to. So socioeconomic status, wealth, that's an easy one. Lastly, we'll talk about education. There's certain expectations placed on people who have a higher education. Even you place these expectations on yourself. This is the most important thing for understanding all of these dynamics of sociology, so that we are not so hard on ourselves, because we tend to be our harshest critics. And so, for example, if we don't have a degree, we think that we're not worth anything, but that's not right. Same applies to all of these other things. Maybe we don't feel masculine because we don't fit what the specific. We need to find out where we're getting our definitions for each of those. We can trace them and learn a little bit more about them. For education, for life in general, we're led to believe that there's only certain paths that are respectable. But if you think about life in other areas, dynamics of sociology in other areas, for example, in the East, then you can find new value in things that you maybe didn't have value in. So things that genders do in other places that maybe you didn't do here, things that rich people do in other places or poor people do, things that they can find joy and pride in, things that someone who with lower education do that in other areas. We can find respect in areas by understanding the dynamics of sociology. We can find new respects in the traits that we already have in ourselves. And that's very important to staying to knowing that we have a right to be here. So I kind of just want to wrap this up. Those are 5 examples of dynamic sociology. Apologize for the quality. I'm working with different things here. I definitely am enjoying the feedback that I'm getting, and I enjoy doing these videos. this segment, the dynamics of sociology. We'll come back to some of these. Be sure to post. You can also, I guess, the best thing you could do is share my channel with anyone else that you think might find these ideas interesting. It's just you know, I get so. You know, sometimes we can feel like we've already done a lot of things out there. If we're going to go to the bar and drink, if we're going to do this and that, of course, every experience can be exciting with the right people, and you always want to, I think, prioritize the energy in the world, and then for those downtimes, you can definitely you know, stimulate your mind a little bit, and through some of these videos, I suppose. The most important thing is that the universe is always trying to bring us back to be at a harmony from something that happened a long time ago, some kind of big bang, but maybe not in the way that science has led us to believe. But so keep a calm weight off your shoulders, and try to stay in touch with the universe, and it'll guide you at any given time. We'll talk more about all of this in the future. This is Higinio Talks. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll talk again soon.